Wahasu, presented by Sprint. Be there now with 055.
The valley in Manianguin is once again green and serene and has reconstituted and rejuvenated itself as only nature could. The jungle has reclaimed the old site, and the river, polluted as it is, continues winding its way to empty itself in the bay, to evaporate and fall again as rain on another day. But the valley of 50 years ago was a valley of despair. It was reminiscent of the plight of the Native Americans, I should say, when they were being herded in their own territory because they were in the way of the strangers claiming the land as their own. To feed ourselves, small foraging parties were formed to search and obtain food from whatever source was available. But in risking their lives to go on food searches, many men and boys saved their own, because while they were away, guards would normally come into the camp and get all the able-bodied men and boys in the camp and use them as supply and ammunition carriers to the front. Now, we had no idea at the time what happened to them, but after the war, we found out when we found their bodies. Sadly, we were to discover more and more bodies of innocent women and children, as well as those of the able-bodied men and boys. Hunger, disease, and the bayonet had taken its toll. Although my father never answered my question, "What's a war?" or a Japanese officer's question, "Why are we at war?" here we were, the victims of a war, and our only crime was being in our ancestral homeland. Tisinilay no malofanisti programa gi Manianguin sa tiu Funasamoro. Sa masyasta megen sa kan malofanisti kan man stabe Manianguin ta na malofanun dia tiu hasu Manianguin. Wahasu sa masyaman madedesit wina tiempo anakutet das fihuita man ajudanay. Nagwanay bianay dudo ni guahu pat yotototo. The fazalay na dudo ni chamuruhu ni chamuruta. Isna gwana uli pa una tempo na. Fisay manobin situ man adiskutisa man adiskutisan maisa si ha. Mafunut sa momoro man esaloza man manijuzuta. Equal man ginin man sa siya na samoro sa itsamoro ni nasoko itaw totalofofo malesyo agad niya odut salampago non-fit titegmanolay titegmano itsamoro itempungera man mauli utoto masya dididenan niya mananayo masya man jajajas majujudo ang kumatyo matotok-toko. Pusese na malago na Funasamoro sa Diebi itapolo gi record ala Funo English station in Tepta i Funo English and Funasamoro sa man mamala sina tiempo po siya man hobin so mataytay so maekungog so malii so matungo gatsong hafa tutuhonta na tauto hafa naman ay gwinit na tauto hafa magay minangyet niya at minolek niya ikustumbreta tataon na imanom ko lista mangay gilangit takun sige na sinenti sa este mismo sinentin Samoro este mismo sinentin agad niya este mismo sinentin Guam untungwa magahid estilaleko. Liberation. You know, it just occurred to me a few days ago that we don't have a word for liberation really in Chamorro. We have liberation, but we don't say that. We say liberation. That's how much this beautiful word means to all of us. When it finally came to us in 1944, it came quickly. In our particular camp, I had already left the valley on one of those foraging missions when the camp was liberated. The Japanese guards had long disappeared. And my sister Maria told me about the events. She said 3 Marines, or may have been Army soldiers, simply walked into the camp and she said, among others, "Hey, what are you guys doing here?" And they said, "We come to liberate you." 1, 2, 3. 3 Marines with 3 soldiers came to liberate a whole camp full of thousands of people. They were immediately surrounded by everyone in the camp, and everyone was hugging and crying deliriously. Finally, they were told to get their things and be prepared to leave. I hear it was the quickest muster and staging and getting together of people any place at any time. Just like that, everybody was ready to go. There was no missing this particular march. As they exited from the valley, they ran into more and more soldiers and Marines who had positioned themselves around for protection. But one thing that struck many people at that time was how happy the liberating forces were at liberating us, to the point where they seemed to be happier at liberating us than we were at being liberated. As one of them explained to me later on, he said, saving someone's life makes risking your own really worthwhile. These fighting men were from a new breed of Americans, and we were happy beyond imagination to return their embraces. You know, as I talk about this, I can still see old Pete Rosario, my friend, strumming his guitar and giving his rousing rendition of "Oh, Mr. Sam, Sam, my dear Uncle Sam, won't you please come back to Guam?" That was the song of the times, folks. I didn't do it justice, but I remember the words. As songs are often associated with particular war periods, so are photographs and paintings. For instance, the flag raising on Iwo Jima is a classic example of a picture associated with the campaign, and is known the world over. Lesser known, but very representative of what happened to us 50 years ago, is this painting by Marine Sergeant McDermott, simply entitled Liberation. And the original of this painting, by the way, is in the Marine Corps Museum in Washington, D.C. This painting is quite revealing. Notice, for instance, the thick walls of the building in the background, which was typical of some of the old Spanish buildings in those days, like the Convento in Merizo. The thick walls were used because they made the building cooler. Notice also the iron sheet roofing, which replaced the red Spanish tiles, which were easily damaged by wind and debris. But the most telling part of this painting, however, are the 2 kids. The boy and the girl are attired in red, white, and blue, which was not very easy to do at the time, given the shortage of clothing material. And finally, the little American flag is sticking straight up, defying the law of gravity. Now, this is because there was such a shortage of clothes that we resorted to making flags out of cardboard. The faces of the Marines were typical of the happy liberators. To this new breed of warriors, we were fellow Americans, and it felt real good being told that. As a young officer, General Douglas MacArthur wrote that no one abhors war more than the soldier, for after all, it is he who has to fight it. The great American general was only partially correct. At least the soldiers trained and equipped to fight. Civilians are neither trained nor equipped. Simply, they're caught in a crossfire, and when you are, you lose. Either they get killed or become refugees. My point, everyone abhors war. In human terms, the cost in lives in Guam was very high. The American liberators suffered heavy casualties, but the Japanese suffered 10 times more. But we, the refugees in our own island, suffered heavily too. Some sources say that a minimum of 500 Chamorros were killed during the recapture and liberation of Guam. For a relatively small population of about 23,000, that is not an insignificant number. Furthermore, it was in the manner in which our people were killed that really made it so gruesome, through massacres, torture, and things like that. Because Guam is in the typhoon belt, Mother Nature is a frequent visitor to us and unleashes her fury and lets us know that she's passing through. So our people are very accustomed to handling destruction, typhoon destruction. But what hit Guam in 1941 was war, not a typhoon. And the result was devastation, not destruction. This is what we saw when we came out of the jungle. But this time, we did not run. We fell on our knees. I remember a friend of my father's trying to boost everyone's morale, and did so actually, when he said, "My friends, we must be on our way to heaven. After all, we have been in hell in the valley. And judging from the scenery around here, we must be in purgatory. And here, we have a chance." We did, and what a chance it was. Though badly damaged, our home in Agano is where we headed when we left the refugee camps. Grateful that we were still alive, though tattered and torn, we went to church a lot. As a matter of fact, we went so often that one of my sisters suggested to my mother that we move into the church. For that unsolicited suggestions, he got to go to church a lot more than the rest of us did. But the celebration was not restricted to the Mass, however. As this picture shows, this group is swinging to the jitterbug tune, In the Mood. The younger ones seem to prefer swimming in the nude. These fellows starting a little bit early, learning how to march and salute, while these kids, on the other hand, thought that baseball was more fun even if it had to be played barefoot. In the meantime, classes, if not schools, were popping up everywhere. Some under a tree, some under a roof, some inside, some outside. This one, the Washington Junior and Senior High School in Agana, had its first session around May 1945. I was in that class. In the background is debris from the ruins in Agana being hauled to make what we now know as Paseo de Susana. We returned to our pre-war grades. My class was entered in the 7th grade. 2 years later, in 1947, we were graduated from the 12th grade. Many of us still wearing the same size shoes and trousers we did in the 7th grade. We were either moved very fast in school, or we grew very slowly. Over the years, we've heard the heroic acts of Pete Cruz, Ben Chargolov, and Angel Flores, among others, who manned defensive positions around the Plaza de España and fought the invading force. During the occupation, we were inspired by the courage of Father Dueñas and his brother Eduardo, Kinlim Tiaco, and many others, men and women. These stories of personal courage and heroism by Chamorros during the war make us stand taller today, 50 years after the action. To Antonio Nortero, whose many acts of bravery and courage caught national attention and was awarded America's highest award for a civilian, the Medal of Freedom. If he were a military man, he would have received the Congressional Medal of Honor from the President. This fighting spirit continued after the island was secured. From the Guam Police Department emerged a group of native combatants called the Combat Patrol, whose mission was to go after stragglers and snipers. Shown in the picture were two of the finest, Sergeant Juan Argon and Felix Wistig. In this group of very courageous men was one who did intelligence work before, during, and after the occupation, but could not reveal his activities and suffered the stigma of being a Japanese sympathizer for many years. Finally, in 1985, the Marine Corps revealed his courageous actions, and he was honorably discharged as a Marine and buried with honors at PD Veterans Cemetery. His name, Adolfo Scandaluri. Guam has had women of courage and men of courage in World War II. This is about a few of them. I am honored to focus your attention on them as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of our liberation. Those who marvel at the buildings at Tumon today would reach immediately for their video recorders were they to peek at the Agana of 53 years ago, yesterday. Orderly, clean, and against a background of old Spanish structures, it was, by any criterion, a very beautiful city. Most of the schools in the Agana centered around the Plaza de España, as did most of the buildings. Across from the Richard P. Leary School was the jail and the Records and Accounts building. I believe that the very original Bank of Guam, as a matter of fact, was in the first floor of this building. I had mentioned earlier, in an earlier episode, that in this program, that Guam paid very dearly for being in the crossfire of World War II. Now, this is what happened to those beautiful buildings. This is one of the early replacements. If you look closer, you'll note that we were not very good spellers. We introduced a new way to spell depository, but it did not catch on, so we had to go back to the way Mr. Webster taught us to do it. We were, however, good counters of money. Here's one counter with his friends. He did very well as a banker. The moral of my story is that you had better be nice to your young tellers when they are growing up on the job, because one day they may be chairman of the board and they'll be telling you what to do. We are, of course, talking about Sus Guerrero. Just think about it. A few months earlier, these young Chamorro businessmen and women, their language consisted of kurruk for calling their chickens, indu for calling their male pigs, nena for calling their female pigs, and ne